Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life. Want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. In this episode, we get to speak with Jeffrey Skolnick. He is an experienced CPA with a history that spans more than 30 years. He has been assisting small business owners with their businesses for over 30 years. Whether you are an individual who already owns a small business, is considering opening or purchasing one, or just someone who requires tax advice, I think this man is a good choice. Let's learn more about how he got started with his career. Jeffrey, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. It's kind of cool.
Yeah,
Appreciate you having me out there. Um, so how things
absolutely.
going for you?
Things are going great here. We've been fortunate enough to be working from home, and our kids are working with us from home. So it's been really exciting past few months. And we so I got connected. We got connected through Matchmaker.fm, which is a service provided by Podit, I think. I can't even remember the name of the company. I just got introduced to Matchmaker, and Jeffrey, you reached out and he said, "Hey, I would love to be on your podcast and talk about what I know." So I was like, "Hey, you're a CPA. For somebody to I've been looking for somebody like yourself to talk to about my state of small business and my state of what's going on in the world." So to start it off, I would love to get a little background on, how you got into this field, what's inspired you and kept you in this field, and yeah, go from there.
Sure. Well, I as we just when we spoke previously, I let you know I went to college down at University of Maryland. Graduated way back in 1984. Um, got out, got a job with an accounting firm. Just as I was a junior accountant. Um, Worked my way up eventually. Well, switched after a year, went to another firm, wound up passing my CPA exam. And I guess it was about, it was the end of 1995. So I guess I had been in the business for about 11 and a half years.
Yeah.
I decided to venture out on my own. The firm I was with, which had been a smaller firm, which I liked, I had been acquired by a large firm,
Hmm.
and I wasn't as enamored with that as I was with the smaller firm. And I had spoken to a couple of people, and I just kind of decided I wasn't happy there, and I was going to, I had a couple of accounts. I started building some things up, and said, I'm going to go on my own and kind of decide what I want to do, like whether I
Yeah.
want to take my accounts to another firm, and become a partner there, whether I wanted to go to a private accounting firm or, kind of see what happened. And I just kind of decided to see what happened. And 24 and a half years later, it's still happening. I don't know. I never really made it. I got really used to um, working on my own. And it's funny because I always say that every day that you work on your own, it makes it harder to work for somebody else. In fact, I
Oh
did some
yeah.
business coaching with a guy who used to call it psychologically unemployable. uh, not that you can't go work for somebody else, but in fact, honestly, the strangest thing for this whole pandemic has been for me. I work out of my house, and I work and
Yeah.
my office is in the basement. So between early in tax season, up through like maybe March 15th, I'm working on partnerships and corporations, and I tend to go to the businesses themselves because that's where
Mhm.
the records are. It just makes things a little bit easier. But generally, once I go from like March 15th to April 15th, it's usually 90% of my days are spent at home. So for me to be quarantined between March
Mhm.
15th and, man, now it's running a little bit long, but the strangest thing to me was it's really not that strange. That's kind of what I do at that time of year. And I kind of popped my head up last week and was like, yeah, what are people doing that aren't working? Because, I mean, we've been, as an accountant, I've been so busy with this, and we'll get into that in a little while with the
Yeah.
CARES Act and everything. But so that's just kind of what happened. I wound up going on my own, and then I said, after a while, the first year I was out, I had left. I had a couple of accounts on my own, and I had worked a couple of per diem jobs just until I
Mhm.
built up a little bit of a business. And then after about a year, I was just totally on my own, and it's just been a different lifestyle, for me, because I've been used to working at home. I mean, in
Mhm.
some ways it's great. I mean, because outside of tax season, I have a little bit more time. And I was always, the parent that was able to go on the class trips when my kids were,
Mhm.
small. But during tax season, it's probably not as good being on your own because you're literally working 24/7. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, and if you're not and you're awake, you feel like you should be working. So it's
Mhm.
it's 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 a little bit stressful. And as you could imagine, ever since this tax season has been very strange.
Yeah.
First of all, being extended, and that itself wasn't really a big deal. It's just, okay, so we extended it. It's actually kind of easy because when I get returns, I call, people are home because where are they
Yeah,
going to be, right?
everybody's
So they
home.
can answer my questions. And then all of a sudden, when the law passed on March 27th, um, oh my God. Oh my God, what happened? Like, and I remember reading the law on March 27th and saying, oh my God, as this was coming, I was like, this is going to be huge. Like, just looking
Yeah,
at between the economic impact payments and the PPP, which is the Payroll Protection Plan program, I kind of knew that it was going to be huge. And so what I did was, I decided to get out in front of it. And what I did was I put together information, and the law passed on the 27th on a Friday, and I had my first Facebook Live on Monday, March 30th, because I
nice.
knew everybody was going to know. And then since that time, whether it's through my Facebook Lives or my emails or podcasts, I've tried to keep everybody updated. And I'll be honest, my podcasts are probably the most behind out of everything, but I'm going to get a couple more of those in there as well. But between my email list and my Facebook Live, I've tried to keep everybody as up to date as I can. And if you've been watching this at all, you know that the law was passed very, very quickly. 880 pages of legislation that came out. Luckily, I only had to deal with the
Wow.
first quarter of it, because the last three quarters really had nothing to do with me. And since then, there's been, almost every other day, there's been something else that's come out. A clarification here, a clarification there, and it's been a wild ride, and there's a whole lot more to go, as I'm sure you've seen in the news.
Wow, that's just amazing. I mean, they are putting out a lot of money, and it totally makes sense that you'd be super busy because now people are coming to you and be like, "Dude, how can I make off of this?"
Well, I
And
mean,
this
the way it works is when I looked at it, it affected almost everybody. And if you look
mm,
at it, the way the rules were written, it was not, there certainly was no clarity as to who could get it, why, this, that. And that's why you had people like, Shake Shack and Ruth's Chris, all these public companies that some of which have given the money back. I mean, so the
yeah.
Los Angeles Lakers got money. So it's basically, almost anybody. There was, that there were few restrictions. You had to be under 500 people, and
Mhm.
there were some things that came out.
Yeah.
But what happened was all the clarifications that were coming out have mostly been to this point on the borrowing end of it, and it's mostly been on this payroll protection program,
Yeah.
which I'm guessing is where you wanted to hear about, because that's kind of what everybody wanted to hear about. And I
Yeah,
have a lot of
exactly.
clients that almost never bothered me.
Mhm.
Not even, I don't even want to say bother me. They almost never contact me, but now had some real concerns. And I just took the thought process that, I'm there to help them, right? And,
Yeah.
and and this is when they need help. And I really made the decision. And fortunately, my clients have been very forgiving and very patient, because I pretty much put a lot of tax returns on back burner, saying, "Hey, look,
Yeah.
we have 3 more months to file them, and I have to deal with people that are trying to," because the process of getting the money
Yeah.
been kind of odd. Like the eligibility does not change. Like whether, no matter what bank or lending institution you use, the eligibility requirements don't change, but the documentation requirements by the particular lender
Mhm.
can all be different.
So
And some banks are smooth and some are not. It's just
so
that.
that's a ton of information. Let's break it down a little bit
Sure.
because I'm sure my
Sure.
audience is not 100% or maybe they are 100%. I don't know, what they're thinking, but for my sake, because I don't know the entire detail, let's break it down to, what are these eligibilities? What is somebody's got to have to be able to be eligible? Uh, you know, tell us tell us a little
Well,
more
sure.
details on
Well,
that area.
the biggest part, or the part that you keep seeing all the print about is the Payroll Protection Program. Sometimes you'll see it written as PPP,
Yeah,
and that's the money that was to go to small businesses, generally speaking.
yeah,
And if you start to get in every specific, you could be here for the next 3 days. But generally
hmm
speaking, it's for smaller companies, which they defined as under 500 employees.
okay,
You pretty much had to show that you were affected by COVID-19, and that,
mm,
or you had to certify that the uncertainty of the events made it made you put you in a position where you needed to get some money in order to keep people on payroll. Because the whole
yeah,
idea of it, obviously by the name Payroll Protection Program,
hmm
was to preserve payroll, get people paid, and hopefully keep them off unemployment. Now, it's
yeah,
been a bit of a slow rollout, so I don't know that it's completely worked that way. In fact, I think you have a lot of people. I mean, obviously, the unemployment numbers are going, through the roof.
through the
I
roof, yeah,
think you may start to see some people come off because what happened is, like, I know I have clients
hmm
where the idea of the act was to get people money almost immediately so that they could continue to pay people and keep them off unemployment. That
yeah,
didn't. So what
didn't happen.
happened was a lot of people, let's say you owned a hair salon, right? Now you don't have the money right now. You can't pay
Hmm
your people. Nobody's coming in. What do you do? So your employees all went for unemployment. Now, when you eventually get that PPP money,
Yeah,
you're going to have to hire them all back. So I think you're going to see some people come off unemployment because people there are some people that certainly got money through the first round of funding, but as you know that ran out
yeah,
less than 2 weeks, and it probably took almost a week for some banks to even get up and running
hmm
fully. I mean, almost all were up within a day or two, but they've all been working out kinks ever since. And some of the kinks have been who's eligible, what's this, how do we calculate the maximum loan amount, all these
yeah,
different things, and pretty much the way it was worked was you took your payroll over the course of 2019, and whether you're if let's say you had regular traditional payroll, you would take your payroll for 2019 and divide it by 12 months, and then you were able to come up with your average payroll cost. There were some adjustments you had to make to it. In other words, if anybody made over $100,000, you had to limit them to $100,000. They didn't want people that were making a lot of money just to get rich off of this. This was
yeah,
just for employees. So you got to take basically their gross payroll. A little bit was added for like state income taxes. You could all state unemployment taxes. I'm sorry, and then you could add certain for the employees. You could add in retirement benefits and health benefits. You came
yeah,
up with all of this number, divided it out, came up with your monthly cost, then that was your average monthly payroll, and
hmm
then that number times 2.5 was the maximum loan. Now, that's pretty much how it worked if you had employees.
yeah,
What was different about this was it was also available for people that were sole proprietor, or is available for people that are sole proprietors or independent contractors. So those
interesting.
people that file Schedule Cs, and have money that's not from a traditional W-2 wage job. And
Hmm
the way that was, you would take your income for 2019. If you looked at your Schedule C,
Yeah,
you would take that and divide it by 12, unless you were over 100,000. And again, then you were capped at 100,000, divide that by 12. But interestingly enough, and I don't know why,
hmm
but partners and partnerships and individuals that are self-employed, whether they're independent contractors or sole proprietors,
hmm
were not allowed to add in their health benefits and retirement benefits. Um, Best explanation I can give you is what my parents used to tell me when I was a kid, which is because they said so.
because
so,
it says so.
so I don't know why an S corp owner can get $100,000 salary plus health benefits plus retirement benefits,
Yeah,
and a Schedule C person can only get $100,000. But it is what it is, and we have to abide by the rule. I am not advocating for anyone to
right.
deceive the SBA or the federal government. So that's kind of how it worked. And again, so the rules were fairly simple, except there was a lot of parsing of words as far as what was the maximum pay, what was includable in payroll, what wasn't, and there were a bunch of clarifications and frequently asked questions that came up, about 4 different rounds that came out. And the
Hmm.
interesting part about the PPP is that if the proceeds are used in the manner as intended, you can get forgiveness of part of or all of the proceeds. So in other words, let's say you get the money and it's based on 2.5, months of payroll,
Yeah.
then you pay people for the next 8 weeks once you get it. And like now the forgiveness part is starting to come out and people are trying to determine exactly how to apply for or exactly how to get the forgiveness on the loan. But pretty much what has to happen is you have to use at least 75% of it for payroll. The
Okay.
remaining 25% can be used for rent, utilities, or mortgage interest. All
Mm.
right. But this is more, again, I'm talking about mortgage interest and rent. I'm talking about on your business, not necessarily
On
on
the
your
best. Yeah,
house.
exactly. Not
But
Joe.
now everything that had come out so far really had been on the borrowing end. How do I get the money? Do I qualify? Um, what's my maximum loan amount? All of those things. Now that people are starting to get the money, everybody's starting to ask me the questions on how do I keep the money? What do I have to do for forgiveness? Can I do this? Can I do? And that's where I think you're going to see equal amounts of clarifications coming out on that. But that's coming because I mean, I've told a lot of people, here's what I know so far, but it's
Yeah.
not a lot because, there's questions, can I, let's say I use money and I pay these people, my company, do I have to pay them the same rate they were getting right before they were paid? Can I bonus them some amount?
Yeah.
I know. So there's a bunch of clarifications that need to come out in that area. You have to use at least 75% of the money for payroll, and the other 25%, like I said, could be for rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. But there's other reductions too, and it get complicated. If your workforce goes down um, by a certain percentage, your
Yeah.
forgiveness will go down. And again, that goes back to, you have to remember why the program was put in place in the first place. Payroll Protection Program. It was put in place to keep people off of unemployment. So if you don't bring somebody back from unemployment, then they're going to
Yep.
penalize you
You gotta send that
unless you
money
hire
back.
somebody else to increase your workforce. But that whole process, although I know we just did that in a few minutes,
Yeah.
literally been my entire life for the last month.
Wow.
It's
That's
been, because it's pretty much, it affects all small businesses, and being a sole proprietor, that's my entire client list. Because everybody is a small business, so it's
yeah.
either people asking about that, or of course people asking about the economic impact payments or stimulus payments or recovery rebates, whatever name you want to use. And that's the
Yeah. It's the
$1,200
same
per
thing.
person and things like that. And again, I'm just shooting you what I've been doing. But if you have specific questions or questions you're trying to find out, I mean,
Yeah.
certainly I'm willing to tell you more about it.
Absolutely. Give me one sec. Hold on.
Sure.
So yeah, that's some really dense information and the wow, I can't even start to absorb the information, but it made a lot of sense to me. I mean, you put it down in very clear layman terms and what this relief fund was specifically for. So small businesses don't have to put people on furlough. And my friends are there are some small businesses like one of my friends, he's a dentist and he's like, I had to put everybody on furlough because we don't have any it's there's no
No patients
relief.
other than emergencies. Yeah, no,
Yes.
absolutely.
And he's like, as soon as he found out this is gonna happen, he started calling all the banks, lining up all the lines of credits and to so he can float because that's his main source of income, right?
Absolutely.
How's he gonna stay afloat? Like you gotta have savings, you gotta have all these things. And when you're working in a job where you gotta go in every single day to see clients, to see patients, it's not something like you have a product in place that you can keep selling the product because people are still buying on Amazon. People are still buying, food from the grocery stores because they need to survive. So, but you when you have a person to person connection business like B2C, you need those affordances. You need those um, what do you call those things in place from the
Oh
government?
no, no, systems, no doubt.
Yeah.
And in fact, yeah, it's funny because you said you always have to have some savings and on it, and it's funny.
Hmm.
one of the things I do is, besides, just the regular accounting, I do some business coaching.
Yeah.
And one of the things, there's like a whole system I take people through, right from,
Hmm.
are you organized in the right type of entity? Like, in other words,
Yeah.
are you an LLC? Are you an S corporation? Are you,
Hmm.
whatever sole proprietorship? Are you in a system that makes sense? But one of the things I always tell people is when you go on your own, what do you have as a backup if you run short of cash? Do you have a
Yeah.
home equity line? Do you have? I mean, I don't love credit cards, but
Hmm.
I mean, sometimes if you have to, you have to. Do you have savings? Do you have something? Because I have a lot of people who will come out and say, "Hey, I'm going to go on my own." Well, that's good, but what are you going to do? And you have to realize you're probably not going to get money on day one. I mean, even let's say you're a realtor and you get lucky enough to actually sell a house on the first day that you become a realtor, which would be pretty damn lucky. But let's say it happens, you're still not going to get paid for 2 months. So what do
Nope.
you do? Or what
Nope.
if you're somebody who does uh, let's say you lay tile and you get it, you're in the construction industry and you get a job, you might again get a job on day one, you might go
Yeah.
out, you might do all the work, but
Yep.
you may not get paid until the general contractor gets paid, and he or she may not get paid, for a couple months down the road. So
Exactly.
like you always need something in place. I mean, planning for the pandemic, that's not usually something that I would have thought of when I'm doing it. I'm just being honest about it. But
No,
it is something that, like I said, anything that you need to be prepared for anything because you don't want to have to go out of business.
absolutely. And to plan for a pandemic, you would have to be at least alive for maybe a couple of centuries to be like, hey, it happened in 1918. I was around, and this is
Yeah,
what
no,
we
that's
did.
yeah, that obviously this has all been a little rough, but like you said, it affected so many businesses, and there was so much confusion. Like the first round of funding for the PPP, um, people weren't even getting loans unless they had a commercial relationship with a bank.
Wow.
And so that left so many sole proprietors like out in the cold because I have clients that were realtors and they
Yeah.
didn't have a business relation. They filed a Schedule C because they got a 1099 from their realtor, but they didn't have a business banking relationship with anybody because they didn't need one.
Yeah. They
so
didn't need one. Yeah,
so
exactly.
they've kind of cleared it up a little bit this round, but it's been crazy, and of course. I don't know if you wanted to get into it all. The economic impact payments. We can also talk about those as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been asking me about that. Am I eligible for the $1,200? Is my child eligible for the $1,200? How do I get the other $500? All of those types of questions, which I can certainly cover for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was my question because I looked it up. I was like, okay, you have to be at least making this much money to be eligible. So now when they say a certain amount, they have the numbers up there. But is that gross or is that
Yeah, well, they
net?
go by your adjusted gross income. So if
Okay.
you look at the tax returns, if you go back before, well, now the returns, you actually have to look at the adjusted gross income line. But if you
Hmm.
remember, like right before 2018, from 2017,
Yeah.
if you remember the long income tax form, AGI, adjusted gross
Hmm.
income, was the bottom number on the first page.
Yep.
So it was all your income together, and then they take there's some deductions that they allow you before adjusted gross income, like such as IRAs, self-employed health insurance,
Yeah.
50% of your self-employment tax if you have that, which is that's a fun thing if you've never dealt with before. Well, I mean, if you're self-employed, you wind up that's probably the biggest surprise that I get for people that are self-employed. But as far as it works, if you are an individual with under $75,000
Hmm.
of income, then you were going to get the $1,200 payment, the
Okay.
economic stimulus payment.
Yeah.
If your income was between 75,000 and 99,000, you would get a reduced amount of that $1,200. So in other words, it would phase out over that $24,000.
Sure.
So if you were halfway in between, you
Yeah.
would get 600, right? And as you got closer to the 99, you get till it went down to zero.
Got
Now,
it.
same thing. Now, if you are a head of household, so in other words, in order to be a head of household, you'd have to have a
Hmm.
child. Your income the phase out would start at 112.5.
Yeah.
So from 112.5 to 136.5 would phase out. And if you were a married couple filing jointly, then it would be if you made under 150,000, you'd get $2,400.
Yeah.
And then between 150 and 198,000, the same thing, it starts to phase out. Now, that's how those figures work. Now, in addition, there's been some confusion about the $500 per child. People confuse that to think that that was per dependent. It's not.
Hmm.
What it is it's the same definition as the children that are available for the $2,000 child care credit. So
Yeah.
they have to be under age 17 in
Hmm.
by the end of 2019. So if they've reached age 17, then you're not going to get um, you're not going to get the credit for them.
Yeah.
So uh, so that I know has caused a bit of confusion. Also, if you're claimed on somebody's return, you're not going to get it. So,
Yeah.
I've
Because
had
because
people
they're
tell me,
getting it.
oh, my son or daughter was in college, and are they going to get their $1,200? Well,
Yeah.
no, because you took them. And depending on how you
Exactly.
read the law, it depends on whether it's you actually took them or you're even able to take them, because
Yeah.
sometimes you have the ability to take a child and you don't for various reasons. There can be a situation where you don't, but generally, I think they're going to look to see if you've taken them, and if you haven't, they're eligible. Now, one of the other problems that's occurred has been the IRS put up this tool that was supposed to help everybody called Get My Payment, and it's gotten better as time has gone on, but a lot of people have clicked on that and they'll see something that says status unavailable.
Hmm.
And some of the reasons for that were maybe they're not eligible, and so of course that had everybody in a panic. And I pretty much talked to people and said, look, if you're eligible, you're eligible. The
Yeah.
problem is now that that system is in the process of getting updated. It might just be a matter of your information's not in there. I mean, I know my
Mhm.
parents. I was looking, and at first it said they weren't eligible, or status unavailable, and then like
Yeah.
3 nights ago I looked, and it said, boom, your payment's going to go out on May 1st.
Nice.
So it could just be a matter of getting your information updated. Um, and checks are going to be issued manually for months yet. So I
Yeah.
think if you don't get it, there's really no remedy out there yet. But eventually, they're definitely going to come up with a system. I mean, right now they don't even have enough staff, and they're not even looking at paper returns. So I mean, they
Yeah.
don't really have a system devised to help people that haven't gotten the stimulus payments because they haven't even finished paying them yet. But
Yeah.
let's say you knew you were eligible, and a certain amount of time goes by until they I don't know how long it's going to be. Obviously, they'll
Yeah.
keep us informed. They'll come up with, again, some type of a remedy, and then we'll know. We have to contact them and say, okay, you're eligible for $2,400, or
Hmm.
let's say 3,400. Let's say you have two kids under age 17. How do
Yeah.
we get it? What do we have to do?
Yeah.
And again, like I said, there'll be a system, but it's been interesting because pretty much my entire client list, I would say probably three-quarters of them are eligible for either at least three-quarters are either eligible for the PPP, the Payroll Protection Program,
Yeah. Yeah.
or the stimulus package. So, and
Wow.
some were both. Some
Some
were
or
both.
both. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you can imagine it's been a
It's
little
been
busy
busy.
around here because like, look, people, like you said, they're out of work, they're looking
Yep.
for money,
Yep.
and that's the way it is. Although I guess on the upside for um, some individuals have gone on unemployment, and that extra $600 per week, as that came out of the new act, has certainly helped. In fact, there are a significant amount of people that are actually making more money on unemployment than they were making when they were working,
Really?
which is
Yeah,
kind
that
of
makes
interesting.
sense. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Well, Jeffrey, that's been very mind-boggling. I mean, information, and you're a really easy person to talk to.
I'm
I don't know
sorry, I'm
what.
not hearing you at all.
Oh, I probably went on mute. Hello? Can you still hear me? Hello, hello. Testing one, two, three.
Okay, there you go. All right. I'm
All
sorry.
right.
I had something
Can
going
you
on
hear
my
me?
end.
All
Okay.
right. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, it's been really dense information, but very important information, especially for small businesses and employees that are unemployed, or people looking for that government money to help them, weather this crazy storm, and we don't know when we're going to come out of it. Um, but you're really easy to talk with, and you have a ton of information. You have very well laid out, so I appreciate that.
Thank
So
you. I try to keep it very uh, I try to keep
layman
terms that's just what I call English as opposed to
English.
some of the legalese. Sometimes when you get into it, it just gets, really, really crazy. And if anybody's looking for me, you can go to Facebook onto Home Business Tax Tips. And I actually even have a sign up if you look at one of my posts for my email list.
Nice.
And
Yeah, I
keep
just
kept updated. I mean, there's been a ton of stuff, and like I said, I think that now that people are starting to get the money, you're going
yeah,
to see just as many clarifications coming out on, what is a utility, what's considered
yeah.
rent, how can I pay somebody, can I pay my employees bonuses,
Hmm.
how does this money, how does it work? Because what happens is if you don't get, and I didn't cover, if you don't get all of your money forgiven, then what
Hmm.
happens is it turns into a loan that's payable over 2 years at 1% interest. So it's still cheap money
Yeah.
in all honesty. And the
Hmm.
way that it works, hopefully, is, most of, if not all of it, will be forgiven and you won't have to worry about it. But if you run
Hmm.
into a situation where you do have to pay some back, it's not a it's not a bad thing. In fact, I even have a couple of clients that are thinking they're not going to be able to use all of it because they don't have, let's say, rent or utilities to use the part that's not payroll.
Yeah.
So they're thinking of paying off, some credit cards and then just, having this loan at 1% for 2 years and paying that off and just saving a bunch of interest. So it's not, that'll
It's
work
not
too.
that'll work too. And what is the limit that somebody can get a loan for?
It's based on your payroll. It's
Oh,
based. I
okay.
mean,
So if you
there
have a
are some
poor
other. There's a bunch of programs out there. I've gone over the most popular one, but there are some other what they call economic injury disaster loans.
hmm
Sometimes you'll see them written as EIDL
Yeah.
that allow you up to like $1,000 an employee as a
Okay.
grant. And and the SBA also has loans themselves. The PPP is a loan program within under SBA lending. The
Hmm.
difference in that program it is that it has a forgiveness provision so that um, you're able to if you do things correctly get a part of your loan forgiven, which normally results in taxable income, right? If
Yeah.
we have a cancellation of debt, that's normally taxable income, unless there's a section in the code, in the Internal Revenue Code, that specifically states it's not. Fortunately, there was a provision put into the code for this so that this money will not be taxable income,
Yeah.
which is kind of very cool, which is very
That
cool.
is pretty cool. Yeah. Cool, man. So that's a ton of information you talked to us about. You talked us. Sorry, I'm a little exhausted.
It's okay.
But, we've had a really good conversation. You talked us through the tax code. Well, not through the tax code because that's impossible. But you told us a little bit about the CARES Act, a little bit about the PPP, and you walked us through a little bit about your journey and why you got into or how you got into accounting, and you started your own business. But what was um what was your motivation towards accounting going
um,
way back?
You know what? When I first started college, I actually was pre-med, and to be honest with you, I was doing pretty much anything but studying
Yeah.
my first semester in college, and so that wasn't working out really well. And I really was just at the time looking for a profession when I was in college that I thought would, I'd be able to make some money, and that I thought would be, something that would be stable
Yeah.
and that they that and you know and there it is. I mean, I've seen people in different industries, like I've seen people in the construction industry where when times are good have made an absolute fortune, and when
Yeah.
times are bad, not so good.
Mhm.
Where I've been much more steady, I would say.
Oh,
um
yeah.
but just I can't say that. I mean, obviously, in a year like this, it's just been, I mean, an incredible amount of work that was added. But again, like I said, clients needed help. But
Mhm.
so and when I was working for somebody, like as I said, I worked for other people for about 11 and a half years.
Yeah.
um I got to the point where I just wasn't as happy with the firm I was at, And like I said, I went on my own because I
Mhm.
figured that would give me the most flexibility. It gave me the flexibility that if I decided I wanted to stay on my own, I could stay on my own. If I wanted to
Yeah.
join another firm, I could join another firm. Or I could always have the option of going private accounting. I didn't
Yeah.
like that option as much
Mhm.
because I was afraid, right now I'm 57 years old, and I was kind
Yeah.
of afraid that, what happens if I'm, mid 50s
Mhm.
and I get fired,
Yeah.
and now I'm too young to retire,
Mhm.
yet, once you get to that age, you're not exactly the most marketable person because, you tend to be making a little bit more money
Yeah.
and you're a little bit older. So that, people that are hiring are looking for somebody who's 35, that's less money and they're willing to mold them a little bit. So I just decided when I went on my own, I kind of liked having the control.
Mhm.
Became a control freak if I wasn't already. And I also like the fact that I'm probably the only accountant that spends literally 90% of his life in a t-shirt.
Mhm.
Funny, I used to get all dressed up to go to these seminars that I used to give in front of like 40 people. Now
Yeah.
I sit home and in my basement in a t-shirt and I make a Facebook Live and gets distributed and 5,000 people look at it. So
Nice.
it's a different it's a different world out there.
Mhm.
Um, but I try to do it, and I really appreciate you saying that I simplify things because that's kind of I don't know. I've always had this bug up my butt, I guess, from
Mhm.
people that try to show you, how smart they are. I'm
Oh,
never
man.
impressed by somebody that can confuse me with their profession. We all do what
Mhm.
we do, and and of course, you can take the language from your profession and confuse somebody who doesn't know that, and that doesn't
Exactly.
impress me. What impresses me is, like let's say I'm talking to a doctor. If he or she can take a very complicated procedure and explain it to me in a way that I can understand it, that impresses me.
Yeah.
The fact that you can use medical terms that I don't understand,
Mhm.
I would expect that. So
Yeah.
and that's kind of, that's the approach that I always try to take with people is, they want answers to their questions and everybody's question is just as important. I mean, I might be dealing with somebody who's going for a PPP loan for
Yeah.
$350,000 and I might have the conversation a minute later with somebody who's talking about, $1,000 refund on their income tax return.
Mhm.
Depending on where they are in life and what their expenses and everything are, that $1,000 to that one person. I mean, I'll put it to you this way: I've had clients when I was working for a firm. I saw a guy write a check for $1.2 million for an extension without blinking, and I've had
Yeah.
clients that if they owe $1,000 have to go on a payment plan. So
Wow.
you
Yeah.
have to always. I mean, I had a boss one time that told me, and I always try to remember it, that you never use the words only if it's more than 50 cents. I mean, I know that's
Yes.
a little over dramatic, but everybody's situation is different. And I try to just, you know, talk to everybody as individuals and find out what their needs are, much like any other business, much
Yeah.
like any other business.
No, that's really, really powerful, man. I appreciate it. I do have some questions at the end of the episode, the
Sure.
podcast. All right. So, quick questions. What is one hobby that you wish you got into?
One hobby I wish I got into, or you mean wish I got into sooner or wish I got into period?
Sooner or period. I don't know,
Um,
something that
well,
you
I guess, and it's going to be a little out of character, I guess, for an accountant. But
I don't think
I
so.
started doing some singing a few years back.
Oh, nice.
Friends and I get together and we play some rock music. And yeah, I kind of wish, I guess, I would have started that a little bit earlier in life
Yeah.
as opposed to in my 50s. But still fun. Still fun.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Awesome. I love it. All right, next question. What
sure.
did you want to be when you were a child?
What did I want to be when I was a child? Wow. I don't know. I probably, I mean, I think as kids, we all wanted to be athletes and such. And believe me, there was no fear that that was going to happen. but, but,
Yeah.
but, maybe a sportscaster.
Mhm.
I, I mean, I don't know. I can't, other than those types of things, I never really like had my heart set on being one thing in
Yeah.
particular. It sure was an accountant. I'll put it to you that way. I mean, that never crossed my mind as a kid.
Well, one thing I wanted to say about being an accountant is that, a lot of people say hey, what should I go into so I can make a lot of money? Should I be a doctor? Should I be a mechanic? Should I be electrician, engineer? But nobody, I mean, nobody talks about what if I just dealt with money and be a banker or be
Well, they
be an
do,
accountant,
and
right?
investment bankers certainly were professional, but I mean, it all depends. There's
Yeah, it does.
so many people I've seen. I've seen, believe it or not, I've seen doctors that make a ton of money. I've seen
Yeah,
doctors that don't make a lot of money. I've seen almost any profession. I've seen it. I mean, I've seen people that are successful and people that aren't. So I
yeah,
mean, I think no matter what, I think it's a matter of what you do. Like in other words, you've got to you have your you have to just go for what you have to do. Like in other
yeah,
words, like I said to you, I saw when this law was written, I just looked at it and went, "Oh my God, this is going to be huge."
yeah,
So, I mean, I just said, "All right, let me start writing articles. Let me start doing Facebook Lives. Let me start pumping stuff out on my mass email list."
yeah,
And that's, I mean, that's what I chose to do.
yeah,
If you're in other fields, obviously there's always things coming down the pike in whatever fields that you're in. Um, you have people that take care of disasters. So when a hurricane or something strikes and everybody's like, "Oh my God, we're out of business." Some of these people clean up because they're like, "Hey, this is what we do." So the, the situations will dictate what you have to do. But I think almost any job, you have to find something obviously that there's a need.
yeah,
Obviously always
exactly.
have to fulfill a need, and you have to find something that you at least. I'm not saying it's got to be your first love, but it's got to be something that you at least like enough that you can spend the appropriate amount of time with it. Because if you hate a job, it's almost impossible to like go on your own for
Yeah,
sure.
it's
Because as going on your own it takes a lot of work.
oh
Uh,
yes, absolutely.
but there's so many fields out there and things change. Like even this pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
when things come back, I mean, things are not going to be the same. Like
No.
I think there's going to be a lot of good and a lot of bad. Like the
Yeah.
good things that are going to come out of it, I think are, right now college is what, 60, $70,000 a year.
Mhm.
I think now that parents are seeing their kids do school online,
Yeah.
or be schooled online, I think you're going to see a much greater demand for online colleges where people say, "Hey, you know what? Instead of 70 grand a year, how about for like 10 or 15 a year?
Yeah.
My kids can." Now you do lose some of the college experience. I'm not going to argue that staying
Mhm.
home, but you know what? It depends because when you're spending over a quarter of a million, between 250 and $300,000 for your child to go through college,
Yeah.
to come out, what kind of a job do you need to pay those kinds of loans off? And I think you're going to see some of those things. I think you're going to see quite a bit of manufacturing, like of pharmaceuticals and different things. I think you're going to see that, we're not going to be as reliant maybe on some other countries,
Exactly.
in certain things. So I think you have to actually always be out looking to see what do you think is going to happen next, and that's going to also dictate what kind of fields because things change. Like going way back, I'm sure when you were an elevator operator in like
Mhm.
1920, or 19, you thought that your job was stable, or if you worked a switchboard or
Yeah.
something like that, which that now those jobs don't even exist.
They don't even
But
exist, yeah.
then again, did the job exist of someone who takes care of networking computer systems? You know what I mean?
No.
That
Yeah.
didn't. So there's always, I think there's always a
New
fluctuation of
yeah.
some jobs will become extinct, because of modernization, and others will develop, and you have to
Exactly.
always be able to fill a need somewhere.
Absolutely. Wow. Cool, man. Thank you so much. That was awesome. Next, I have like 3 more questions. We're
Sure,
gonna
go
do
ahead.
quick shot. Alright, what is your favorite movie or TV show?
Well, my favorite TV show was All in the Family. Um, just
Hmm.
because I'm just kind of into comedy, and I kind of like
Yeah.
them because they picked on everybody.
Yeah.
They picked on everybody, and you can't do that in today's environment
No,
anymore
you can't.
because nobody can take a joke. But that's just, or not a lot of people can, but the few that can, it's not worth the headaches that you're going to get. But
Yeah.
I always thought that was kind of fun because they poke fun at everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. Next question. What movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
I got to play a character. Wow. Um, I have no idea. Maybe the movie
The
Rockstar.
Rockstar. Oh yeah.
Look like a
Oh
lot of
yeah, with
fun, right?
Matthew with Matt what's that? Mark
Mark
Wahlberg.
Wahlberg.
Oh my god, that was such an awesome movie.
Was it?
Oh my god. I'll have to go watch it again, man. I'm gonna have to go watch it again. All right,
Yes,
who?
and actually, what's really interesting at the end of that movie, the
Yeah.
singer that takes over him at
Oh
the very end,
yeah, I
one of my,
know.
is Miles Kennedy, who's actually one of my favorite singers. He sings with he sings in a band with Slash from Guns N' Roses, and he
Uh-huh.
also is in a band called Alter Bridge. But it's
Nice.
really crazy. I watched that movie for years and never even knew that until years later when somebody told me he was in it, and I went back and rewatched
Like,
it. I was like, wow.
what?
So it was it
That's
kind of
it.
interesting.
Nice. All right, last question.
Sure.
If you were a board game, what would it be?
Wow. If I was a board game, I have absolutely no idea. Twister, I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, that one, I gotta be honest, I don't have an answer
Dude, it could be easily Monopoly because you
for. Okay.
deal with money, you help people, you know,
Well,
manage.
if that works for you, sure.
All right, man. Thank you so much. So, folks, that was an awesome chat with Jeffrey Skolnick. I think I got that last name right.
You did.
You can find him on uh, jeffcpaworld.com. He's got an awesome Facebook page as well where he goes live and talk about home business tax tips. And I'll be talking with Jeffrey very near in the future because I have a need for a CPA. And
Awesome.
I haven't worked on my stuff in a while. And yeah, man, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, cool. A lot of fun.
Talk soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode on Hacks and Hobbies. We absolutely appreciate your contribution. You can find additional notes on hacksandhobbies.com. Please share the podcast with your friends and tell them what you learned about our guest today.